2018 meeting of the City Council of the City of Fredericksburg. We will be led in invocation by Councilor Matthew J. Kelly, and I believe it will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Scout Teddy Durant of Troop 1717. So please stand.
Most merciful Father, please bring peace to those in distress and comfort to those in pain. Please bring our men and women in uniform home safely to their families, serving both home and abroad, and also be with their families. Help us to make decisions in the best interest of all the citizens of Fredericksburg, and always remind us that we are here to serve and not be served. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Would our Mr. Durant please come forward? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We do not have any presentations this evening, so we will move right into our public hearings. Madam Clerk, will you please read item 5A?
Adopting the revised Pathways Plan 2018.
Mr. Nelson, please.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you. What you have before you is the revised Pathways Plan. The last one we did was in a long time ago, 1996. It was the one before that, 2006. We've had a Pathways Committee that's consisted of citizens and staff. We've worked on this for about 6, 7, 8 months. A lot of advanced work before then. Doing something like this in-house has a certain advantage because we're closer to the community. We're able to get, I think, better input, and we've tried to do as much of that as we can. So what you have here is the final version. It has gone through the Planning Commission. Planning Commission did recommend approval. You'll notice that there's a variety of appendices in here related to traffic calming and natural surface trails and maintenance plans and such. These are almost like introductory sections here for things that we need to do a little bit more comprehensively, but we get it started here. And then tonight you were provided a map of the city that has the various kinds of trails that are either in place or planned, including our sidewalk network, off-road trails, on-street connections and such. Happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Nelson? All right. I can tell you, for one, that I know of no single thing this city has done for a long, long time that has elicited more positive support and grateful comments from citizens than our network of trails and the effort we've made to make this a walkable and bikeable city. So thank you for that good work. Councilor Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Mr. Nelson, thank you for a great report, a great plan. And I also want to thank the citizens who participated in this. Can we name them, who they were?
Sure. Kevin Brown, who's here, Rob Maple, Andy Wolfenbarger from Idlewild, George Solly, who championed trails when he was on the council.
Thank you. And I also hope to live to see so many of the ideas implemented, especially some of the major corridors that keep our parts of our city divided. I just think it's going to be really important to try to move as fast as we can, but I really appreciate the work.
Thank you for that, and I should point out to the council that we had several ideas suggested by council members that we put in here as well. So
I think especially something like Lafayette Boulevard that is
Right.
highly traveled,
Right.
especially by young school-age children. It's not safe.
Right.
And even Route 1 that people
Right,
walk along.
exactly.
So appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. This is a public hearing. If there's any member of the, oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Nelson, are there any plans for how to prioritize these projects, assuming that the Pathways Plan is adopted?
We wrestled with that a bit. I know that's one of the council goals, to prioritize these things. We thought we were doing good to get them listed, but there's a variety of ways that these will get done. For example, a lot of the onward connections don't require a large outlay of money, but can be worked into annual budgets and sharrows, put on the road to make those designations, certain safety features added to the roadways. Others are going to require significant more investment, and those need to be worked into the larger transportation funding programs. So we didn't prioritize them yet, but I think that's something that we can do and bring back to you, just to suggest sort of an implementation plan.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Councilor Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. Just have a comment as well. Mr. Nelson, also want to tell you thank you. So it's like tonight is your night. But thank you, and also considering, when we receive requests, and it's a process sometimes that a lot of citizens don't know, because of course, even when I say something, I like to see it in about 30 days myself. But there's a process, so thank you, and it's always good that we can go back and say, hey, now it's in effect, or you can check the website and you can see it. And most importantly, like Lansdowne Road, those just the conversation alone to get it started, that's very dangerous spot. And I look at Lansdowne sometimes as like, does anybody know that's still part of the city? And that's just the way it's kind of like off to itself. And it's not much going on with 3 or 4 businesses over there, but I travel every day, and folks riding bikes, and I see people step over the guardrails to get out the way of tractor trailers, and so it's very important what you guys are doing. So I just want to say thank you, and also for the community outreach and those 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock type of meetings that you guys have been doing that a lot of folks don't know about. So thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. If there's any member of the public who would like to speak to this matter, please approach the podium, state your name and address, and please adhere to the 5-minute time limit.
To speak about baseball, but I'll speak about trails first. I have been Kevin Brown from 460 Riverside Drive and live right on the Heritage Trail. We moved there 3 years ago, and probably a year after that I asked to join the Pathways Committee because I had a very large interest in trails at that point. And I started this Facebook group, which many of you are familiar with, posted a few pictures in 2015 and invited a few friends, and that's grown to 2,800 people that all share pictures and stories and just the joy that we have for our trail system. So it's very popular, and we have a lot of fun with it, and I just wanted to echo that it's a great resource, and I hope we continue to make the improvements that have been started and make those investments, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your service on the Pathways Committee. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this matter? All right, then the public hearing is closed. This is a resolution and only requires one vote to adopt the plan. And I would like to point out that it has many aspects, some of which are safety and much of which is very important connectivity, connecting neighborhoods and areas of the city. What is the will of the council? Councilor Duffy?
Mayor, I move the resolution adopting the revised Pathways Plan.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read item 5B?
Amending the special exception for 506 to 516 Sophia Street to allow a total of 13 new townhouses at a density of 25 units per acre.
Mr. Johnston?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a project that's come before you twice before, so a third time hopefully will be the charm. This is a presentation talking about a project on Sophia Street, a townhouse project. We're going to talk about the existing conditions, the previous approvals, what's now proposed, and our recommendations. The area in question is the area on Sophia Street between Wolf and Lafayette and Wolf. It encompasses the area outlined in red here, and then a portion of the parking lot outlined in red there. Formerly, this was two separate parcels. At time of the original application 2 years ago, now the parcel encompassing the three existing buildings that currently provide for 13 existing townhouses has been merged with a portion of the property that formerly was the rear of the Fredericksburg Square, former Elks Lodge building, and was sold to a separate property owner. The proposal, as previously approved, had 7 townhouses, 3 on Sophia, 4 on a street, private street off of Sophia, and then 7 units in a multifamily structure located here within at-grade parking, ground level parking within the multifamily building, and then beneath each of the townhouses. The new owner of the property made the decision that they wanted to elevate the site out of the floodplain, and that was only a distance of about 1 foot. By doing that, they were able to avoid floodplain insurance issues and made them feel that life would be easier to market and sell these properties. This obviously is in the historic district. By elevating the site, it increased ARB's concern about the overall height of the project. And so the developer had decided it was necessary to lower the profile of the property, and in order to do so, they went away from the multifamily development that was as currently shown, and now going back to a pure townhouse project with flat roofs with parapets, basically, and those designs were in your package. So just to recount, in September of 2016, there was the first special exception for 7 townhouses and 7 multifamily. Then in September of 2017, the upper floor of the multifamily building was split from 1 unit to 3 units, so the unit count went up, and now we're going to go back down to the 13 unit density of what is currently on the site, but that is still at 25 units per acre, requires a special exception from the 12 units per acre that a pure townhouse project will now generate. The layout is basically similar. There is access via a private road built to public standards off of Sophia that then will access the townhouses that either are accessed only vehicularly and their front door on Riverview Place, or the row of townhouses that have their front door out on Sophia with parking at the ground. Each of these units has 2 parking spaces within each unit. Access is still provided to the rear of the Fredericksburg Square property. Curbside parking is possible on the opposite side of the street. The conditions that were previously established in terms of fencing and approvals by the ARB and other items as shown in the staff report remain. The ARB has given bulk and mass approval to the proposed layout that's before you, and therefore the recommendation is to approve with those conditions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Johnston?
I have one.
Vice Mayor Withers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noticed in the elevations, and this is, I'm just curious about this. There are elevations on all of the units, front and back, except the 7 units. I don't see a front elevation for the 7 units that front and overlook the back of some houses and backyards.
The criteria of the ARB is visibility from public right-of-way or public property.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the ARB, I'm talking about what these townhouses are gonna look like. And I'm wondering, the price range in a townhouse that fronts somebody's backyard, overlooking somebody's backyard, what, is the developer here?
I believe
The
he
applicant
was
is
coming
not.
down. I thought he was going to be here tonight.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I've read all this, and I've seen they've done a similar type townhouse construction in Northern Virginia. I'm just wondering, and I went down there and got out of the car and walked and looked, and,
Yes, sir.
you're overlooking a fence in somebody's backyard, and you got about a 5-yard, it looks like to me 5 yards or so of grass and walk space between the backyard of somebody else's house in front of this. And I'm just curious to the price range and if what people are thinking when they buy a townhouse that fronts somebody's backyard.
I cannot tell you the price range. I've not heard that. The
But I mean,
facade-
you know the layout though, right?
Sure.
That wasn't when they had the apartment buildings. It was those apartment buildings kind of backed up to the Old Elks building, and the parking area next to it was behind those backyards. I'm not in the business of voting on something that somebody else does. It's just curious to me I was just curious to somebody buying a townhouse that faces somebody's backyard. I just wonder. I wondered whether there's another project that they've done that that's similar to this. You don't know?
This is a developer from
That's all.
further north on 95, and so I understand they've done something similar before, but I don't have that specific.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I go look at all these things on site, and sometimes things just pop out. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right.
All right. Councilor Graham.
This project, when I was looking through some of the notes, they had I'd noticed before that there was a potential to be losing affordable housing as a result of this project. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Right. That was an issue raised by a member of the Planning Commission that these units are understood to have a modest rent. I don't know what they rent for, but I think that's a reasonable assumption. They would have a modest rent. Our comprehensive plan sticks a line in the sand saying affordable housing is important, but there isn't a lot there for us to address this kind of a specific situation. The text in the housing affordable housing policy says that housing should be affordable, that's safe, decent, and accessible. I've looked at these buildings also. There are cracks in the wall. They're currently within the floodplain. I cannot describe them as safe, decent, or accessible at this point in time without significant rehabilitation or reconstruction.
Sure, no, and that makes sense. If the structures aren't safe, I mean, that's not good for anybody. The question is more, could we raise the density to a point that maybe that multifamily housing that was in the original plan be a possibility for this kind of location?
I think we would run into the issue of the profile of the development from the ARB's perspective. The developer did not willingly abandon the additional units that the previous approval entitled him to. It was in reaction to the ARB's concerns about the profile of the units. I mean, we had ARB concerned about the profile and the floodplain pushing it this way, and so it is squeezed the project into a limited bulk. And to do multifamily, the developer simply felt he couldn't accommodate all those things.
Okay. Thank
You
you.
know, that is a frequent problem with development. If you increase the density, you also increase the bulk or the size or the height. And you run into,
And particularly for property that's in the floodplain.
yeah, you run into floodplain and historic district problems. It's a delicate balancing act. Vice Mayor Withers?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Mr. Graham, I had some personal experience with that when it was a savings loan many years ago, and the cost of rehabilitating, I mean, some of those buildings are really in such bad condition. The cost of rehabilitating those would have taken them far out of affordable housing reach. I mean, it just wouldn't have been practical. So, I hate to see affordable housing go too, but this was not safe. I don't think this was safe affordable housing. So,
Oh, and Mr. Withers, please don't misunderstand. I'm not trying to say that these structures need to be preserved as is. If the structures need to go, they need to go. But what replaces them is my concern.
Right.
well, thank you, Madam.
Which is something that we hope to address in the future, and that Mr. Graham and Mr. Fry are going to serve on a housing advisory group to do just that. Are there any other questions for Mr. Johnston? This is a public hearing. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to this matter? All right, we will declare the public hearing closed. This is a resolution requiring one vote.
Madam Mayor, I move a resolution to approve amending the special exception for 506 to 516 Sophia Street to allow a total of 13 new townhouses at a density of 25 units per acre.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I want to thank staff and the ARB. I know the original project was somewhat contentious, and now the ARB is, I know, a lot happier with the project. I have voted against this project. Now we are on round 3 of a special exception for a project that frankly is neither special nor an exception to the core of our historic downtown. And I get very leery when we go down this road of doing special exceptions in this area of the city for frankly, I just don't see where it is either a special or an exception. If we want this kind of development, let's go back with the planning department and have a chat about changing how things are developing down here. And to the point, this is the big issue that we have in the city, and we talked about it this evening in gentrification. We are going to see more and more of this downtown where you're going to lose some of these housing, and this is what we're going to get. The property value is going to go up. So if you're looking for affordable housing in this area of the city, it ain't going to happen. That's just the way it is at this point in the ballgame. But I'm very concerned when we start throwing out as many special exceptions as we've done in the downtown area. And as I didn't support it in the past, I won't support it now. Thank you.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 5-2. Kelly and Graham voting against.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Officer Mars for being with us this evening. We have now come to our time for comments from the public. This is an opportunity that we provide each regular meeting for comments from citizens who have signed up to speak before the start of the meeting. To be fair to everyone, please observe the 5-minute time limit and yield the floor when the clerk of council indicates your time is expired. And actually, there are red, green, and yellow lights up there to help. Decorum will be maintained, and comments not relevant to city business and behavior that's disruptive, such as applause, are inappropriate and out of order. We have signed up tonight 4 people to speak. The first is Ronald Grandis. Mr. Grandis, you'll have to go around to the back to get to the public forum. Good evening.
Great. Okay, it's a beautiful day. Of course, special beautiful day. I guess you heard about Thailand, and the kids are back now, and they all recovered, and thank God they're all well. My wife comes from Thailand. So on the agenda tonight is the nice baseball stadium, and I feel it'd be an asset to the community. I live up in the Central Park area there, and I see the mounds of dirt for years and years, and shop at Wegmans, but Again, this is a true blessing about the stadium. I feel for the community and for the kids especially. It's a multi-use stadium, and that means the celebrity people, the concert people will be there, people from the area and the community, and the kids, of course, the special kids will be there. Again, for the community, you know, sometimes it wasn't long ago, I'm from Northern Virginia, and I used to pray and hope that Fredericksburg was mentioned on the nightly news. And right there in the weather, you know, they always left Fredericksburg out, and I was wondering why. So over the years, of course, Fredericksburg has developed. And now the signs are coming down, there's more stores, more place to spend your money and everything else. But, you know, the stadium is, I think, a crown jewel and will be in all of jurisdictions. The Richmond is watching, Washington, D.C. is watching what we're doing down here. So we're making history in a way. Don't take that as a pun, but I mean, you know, I was born on George Washington's birthday, Washington, D.C. on, it's about 70 years ago. So I'm a senior, you know, and thank God, you know, it's just a blessing to be down here. We built a home down here, and really want to see this beautiful stadium. I think multi-use for the people in the area. And again, I liked it so much. My company is Networking PM, and we do large-scale events at theaters and restaurants all over the area. And one of my accounts is right here at the Marriott Hotel, which is a beautiful facility right here in Old Town, and they're an affiliate partner. And they're behind also the stadium, and what we're going to do there is on September 27th, we're going to have a baseball day. So I want you all to proclaim that to be a baseball day, and we're working with the club, and we have the entire first floor of the hotel, and we're inviting a lot of, you know, known people, business people, and of course the media on that day. So that would be very, very important. Again, in closing and everything, and watching the clock here, yeah, this is of course something a little new to me, though I've been in public speaking, but keep it down the 5 minutes. Again, you know, in reference to, you know, the hotel event coming, we have many other different events that we do, of course, too. We do the movie theater Paragon over here on the other side of Route 3 in Splitsville. So there's a lot of community things we do with the children, and we feel the baseball, when I first heard it, I was so excited, picked up the phone, and they said, I'm the first one. I said, well, gee, praise the Lord. That's to talk to you all fine people. So again, you know, please consider, you know, having this for our area, and I think many people will come down and enjoy Old Town as I have, and the history here, because without things like this, people just keep going. Go to Northern Virginia, go down to Richmond, you know, and bypass us. So I think this would be a tremendous, you know, accomplishment if we could do this just like the accomplishment today of those kids, you know, getting out of the cave in Thailand. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Grandis. Kevin Brown. I should have brought my hat.
460 Riverside Drive again. This is exciting. You can see the community just, everybody's just getting into this baseball thing, and I'm into it. I live at the bottom of Fall Hill Avenue, and the whole corridor there from where I live all the way up with all the housing units that are up there. I think I counted about, I tried to figure out how many people could actually walk to games. And so I was trying to figure out how many housing units are within a half mile or a mile. I think I came with like over 2,000, and if there's a total of 10,000 in the city, that's a fifth of the city that could walk to the games, if the math works out with the number of people. But I think it's pretty amazing. I plan on walking with my wife here. It'll be a mile and a half for us to get up the hill to the games, which is about the same thing for us to walk to downtown to the Sounds of Summer. So, you know, it's we will be doing walking, and we'll be encouraging others to walk to the games. I know there's issues. People are worried about traffic. We do see firsthand the traffic on Fall Hill Avenue. We have never noticed a problem with traffic when the concerts are going on on Friday nights, which I understand can get up to 5,000 people. What we do see problems with traffic is during rush hour, 5 to 6 p.m. That's where the traffic problems are. After that, if there were to be the same volume of traffic from 6 to 7 p.m. when there's a game, we'll survive that. It's just busier, but we get through it. And for our corridor, I can say my knowledge firsthand is, and we have to back out onto Fall Hill Avenue to get out of our driveway. So we are very familiar with that traffic. And I am not concerned of the traffic, the additional traffic going up Fall Hill Avenue. And I should be, if anybody, for this baseball stadium and the 5,000 people that would potentially be going to these events. So I just wanted to mention those things and say it's a very exciting time. I asked for permission to start making bumper stickers, and now I've started talking to the museum about giving away bumper stickers and getting donations. So just trying to get entities involved, and it's exciting. I mean, I think the next few years building up to this are really going to be a neat time, and making history came to my mind as well. I mean, we're a very historical town, but this is going to make history for the next 100 years. I mean, and people are going to look back and say, this is when this happened, and it's going to be really cool. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Jacob Fish.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, member of the council. My name is Jacob Fish, and I'm the Coalition's Director with Americans for Prosperity Virginia. AFP Virginia is our state's largest grassroots advocate for the policies and goals of a free and open society. I'm here today on behalf of our network of activists here in Fredericksburg. Respectfully, members of the council, we oppose the proposed plan to build a $35 million stadium at the expense of hardworking taxpayers here in Fredericksburg. Look, I love baseball. I grew up in Ohio, and some of my best nights were watching these games on these hot summer nights at Fifth Third Field watching the Dayton Dragons. It's tempting to believe that a shiny new stadium will create an economic boon for Fredericksburg, but history and research show that that's just not true. Of the dozens of stadiums that have been built across the country at the expense of taxpayers, not a single one has produced a reasonable return on investment or generated enough additional tax revenue to pay for the facilities. Teams get a new stadium, but it's that all of us that get stuck with the bill. Stadium subsidies always have and always will be a swing and a miss. Our tax dollars should be going to vital services, things like schools and crumbling roads, not going to a baseball stadium. Nothing would make me happier than driving to the Potomac Nationals game here in Fredericksburg, but my desire for a quick trip to watch America's favorite pastime shouldn't come at the expense of my fellow taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fish. Harriet Rowe.
Harriet Rowe, Brent Street. I have a friend who got a smartphone, and he called me to tell me about it, and he said the only problem with it was smarter than he. In the last council meeting, I had that little problem. I couldn't get my iPhone to stop playing Frank Sinatra. The only thing I can say about that is when I ran out to the hall to try to figure out how to cut it off, Joe Stafford came on singing Jingle Bells, and that definitely would have broken the seriousness of the matter that was being discussed at City Council. I went to Best Buy and had 3 people, and none of them could tell me how to get rid of an app icon, so I don't have to worry about hitting it by accident. I have to wait for Marcus to come in, so I'll go see Marcus and see if he can help me. And then if you have an iPhone, I'll be happy to share the info with you. So my apologies for disturbing the meeting the last time. I just wanted to make a comment on the subject matter you discussed at your work session, and that was affordable housing. And I wanted to know, I know moratoriums are sort of sticky issues when it comes to the law, but is there any kind of moratorium that can be set forth where the city can have time to look at the issues, look at the 6-month study you're going to be going through, look at its results, and decide, how you want to provide for affordable housing in certain areas of the city? Now, they mentioned the trailer park, mobile home park. I was taught not to say trailer park. Mobile home park is being destroyed, and I understand businesses are going to go up there, so that's more area for affordable housing. And they were talking about, well, do we now somewhere put mobile home park spaces in the future for affordable housing? So I know you can't answer this question. I'm not asking you to answer it, but can you discuss a moratorium on some of the building that's going to go on in the city, taking away areas that could be used for affordable housing. And I'm not talking about the least expensive, I'm talking about the least expensive and moderate housing also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rowe. Your remarks are duly noted in our minutes and will be considered by our Housing Advisory Group as our consideration of this matter goes forward, okay? As you noted in the work session, it is an ongoing effort on our part to see how to address affordable housing and what we can legally do. And that concludes all of the folks who have signed up to speak before us tonight. Does any counselor wish to add something to the council agenda? All right, moving forward. Does any counselor wish to remove something from the consent agenda?
Move consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
This is the time of the year after every council election, when the council reforms in July 1st of that year, the council reappoints or appoints itself to the many boards and commissions on which we represent the city. You may not know, and I will point it out to the public, that besides serving as members of council, the members of the city council have to be represented on as many as 17 different boards and commissions. So we attend many more than 2 meetings a month, just to let you know. So Madam Clerk, how should we do this? Shall we appoint individually or can we do it wholesale?
I think we need to do it individual in case there are any changes.
Okay, you lead us through it, please.
Board of Social Services.
Madam Mayor, you want to bring it up?
You want
We'll
us
just
to
make
nominate
motions?
each?
I'll just make a motion.
Yeah.
I think we just go down, we'll just make a motion, just knock them out unless,
Okay.
I don't think anybody talked about any changes since this evening. So
right.
Madam Mayor, for the Board of Social Services, I'll nominate Counselor Duffy.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I'll move on the Central Rappahannock Regional Library, nominate Counselor Devine.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, on the Community Policy Management Team, I'll nominate Mayor Greenlaw.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I'll move that we appoint Mr. Kelly to Fredericksburg Area Museum.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I'll move that we appoint Counselors Devine and Graham to the Fredericksburg Arts Commission.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I'll move Counselor Devine be appointed to the Fredericksburg Clean and Green Commission.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I will move Mayor Greenlaw as our representative in the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance and Counselor Duffy as the alternate.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I move that we appoint Mr. Kelly and Mr. Withers, and we do not have an alternate at this time for GWRC FAMPO.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I'll move Counselor Fry and Counselor Graham for the Housing Advisory Committee.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I move that we appoint Mr. Withers to the Main Street Board.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve Mr. Kelly and Mr. Graham as the alternate to PRTC.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I'll move that we appoint Mayor Greenlaw to the Rappahannock Area Agency on Aging.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I'll move that we appoint Counselor Graham to the Rappahannock Council Against Sexual Assaults.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I'll move that we appoint Vice Mayor Withers and Counselor Fry as the alternate for the Rappahannock Juvenile Detention.
That's actually Mr. Whitley.
Whitley?
That's Mr. Whitley.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, Mr. Whitley, Mr. Fromm.
That's-
Boy, I'm losing track of this going down this
That's
list.
Assistant City Manager Whitley.
Whitley.
Sorry about that.
Unless Mr. Withers wants it.
Right, yes, of course. It's a strange
Second,
thing,
do
but
we have a
here
second?
All right, please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I move that we appoint Mr. Kelly and Mr. Withers to the Rappahannock Regional Solid Waste Committee.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I move Vice Mayor Withers to be appointed to the Rappahannock River Basin Commission.
Second.
Cast your votes.
Madam Mayor, I move that,
Motion passes 7-0.
sorry, we're girl. Madam Mayor, I move that we appoint Mr. Duffy, Dr. Duffy to the Recreation Commission.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, will move Councilor Duffy for the Regional Group Home Commission.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I move that we appoint Mr. Withers and Dr. Duffy to the Town and Gown Committee.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Madam Mayor, I move that we appoint Mr. Kelly and Mr. Graham as the alternate to the VRE Operations Board.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
And Madam Mayor, I move that we approve Mayor Greenlaw and Mr. Kelly to the Schools Working Group.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. We have our work set out for us for the next 2 years.
Yeah, man.
Mr.
Ask a
Whitley?
Quick question, and if Councilmember Duffy, I think the Group Home Commission, we have a council member and a staff member, which is me. Do I need reappointment? I believe I do.
That's a very good question. Well, perhaps we should appoint you just in case.
Or send someone else,
Okay.
and that's fine too.
Madam Mayor, I move that we appoint Mr. Whitley to the Regional Group Home Commission.
Second.
Okay.
You're
It's one
stuck
Thursday,
now.
so-
All right, please cast your
Clean up.
votes. Okay.
Motion passes 7-0.
So now you're official. All righty. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for serving. Obviously, we kind of divvy this up as to when we're, the meetings that we can make. City Manager's agenda, we have item 11A, and I will call on Mr. Bill Vreeling.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Here tonight to talk to you about the letter of intent with Potomac Baseball LLC. I'm going to keep these remarks fairly brief because I believe that you are fairly well versed in this proposal through our website, fredericksburgbaseball.com, as well as the City Council packet. So I'm going to cover this fairly briefly, but it's obviously a complex, important decision. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them, of course, and as is the Silber family, the owners of the Potomac Nationals. I'm going to start off with just a quick review of the structure of this letter of intent. Of course, this concerns a proposal that would lead to the relocation of the Potomac Nationals, single A affiliate of the Washington Nationals, to the city of Fredericksburg, to a stadium, a 5,000-seat stadium, multi-purpose stadium at Celebrate Virginia South. This would be a privately financed stadium, which is fairly rare. It would be receive significant support from the city of Fredericksburg, $1.05 million for 30 years. However, we do believe that the stadium itself will generate the revenue to cover that payment, hence will not result in existing tax revenue being used to cover that payment. This would be subject to appropriation, this annual amount. However, if the City Council decided not to appropriate, it would result in a termination payment that's equal to the net present value of the future tax receipts that are expected from the project. I'm going to go over the benefits of this project in more detail here in a couple of minutes, but we have broken it into the categories of the use of the stadium, the marketing benefits, having the team, the community aspects, and the jobs that could be associated with this project. So one of the key questions, of course, is will this stadium cover the cost, cover the $1.05 million for 30 years? Based on our analysis, we believe the answer to that question is yes. We did a Brailsford and Dunleavy, which is a very well-regarded baseball analytics firm, did an analysis for us, two analyses for us back in 2013 when we were talking to the Hagerstown Suns, and the B&D projections stated that they anticipate tax revenue of approximately $700,000. It needs to be adjusted some because those studies did not factor in that it was going to be a privately financed stadium, so it didn't factor in real estate revenue. But when you adjust it, it actually comes out to about $748,000, which we've rounded down to $700,000 just to provide something of a margin of safety. We also believe that the city will have the use of this stadium for up to 183 days a year, and we believe that we can generate revenue from that use to the tune of about $250,000. This was based on an analysis that we did of the types of events that we could bring in here to include the Celebrate Virginia after-hours concerts, which we believe on their own could generate $100,000 in just use revenue annually. There would also be a contribution from the developer of Celebrate Virginia South of $100,000 a year. So added together, those three add up to $1.05 million. That doesn't take into consideration the benefits for the city of inflation. This would be a fixed payment for 30 years. So if you apply, we worked with Renaissance Planning to do an analysis of what would be the impact of if there was inflation of 1.5% based on the $700,000 in revenue and tax revenue and $250,000 on use revenue. And what it comes out to is by year 30, based on 1.5% inflation, revenues would actually outpace expenses by about $500,000. So in this case, inflation is our friend. That graph there shows you the trend line with if you factor in 1.5% inflation, which is reasonable inflation rate based on historical data. So I think probably another key question is why pursue this? It's very consistent with many city documents, the comprehensive plan, your city council priorities, specifically number 6, the economic development strategic plan. The use of the stadium will be extremely important, having access to it for high school games, UMW games, concerts, Parks and Rec activities, an array of events that will bring in visitors and activity to the city. The marketing, the value of having the marketing there with the advertisement on the Jumbotron, on the outfield wall, in the program, perhaps at a kiosk, on their website is all valuable exposure that we can use to tell people who are perhaps visiting Fredericksburg for the first time some of the great things that there are to do here in the city. Simply having a team here, we believe, is a lot of value. It's a quality of life amenity. It'll provide a place for corporate outings, for groups to go to. It's a place for the community to come together for family-friendly activities, for fireworks, for scout campouts, for obviously baseball games, we just believe that this will be an important quality of life amenity that will be important in our efforts to bring in visitors and residents and additional businesses. This team, this family is all about the community aspects of this. They want to tell the history of Fredericksburg in this stadium. There's all sorts of creative events that we can put on that showcase our area's histories. I'll keep some of them under my hat for now, but there's some real exciting ideas that have been discussed. We do believe that this will be a place for the community to come together. That will give us a frame of reference to root for the team, for the home team, the Fredericksburg, fill in the blank, perhaps Nationals. So we believe that this will really provide a community amenity. And obviously, one of our key community partners, Mayor Washington Healthcare, agrees with that, and they, as you probably saw, have announced a founding partnership with the team. And obviously, Mayor Washington Healthcare is all about the community as well, and they see what the value that this would provide to our community. And then the jobs. There's This would be the first job for a lot of local teenagers, a couple hundred part-time jobs, seasonal jobs, and about 20 full-time jobs. So what's in front of you tonight is a non-binding letter of intent, which would kick off a 120-day study period where there would be further due diligence that would be done, public input would be taken, there would be some legislative approvals that would be required, including a special use permit and a comp plan amendment. Obviously, the stadium would need to be designed, the final design would need to be submitted and reviewed, and they would need to secure their financing. Again, this would be a privately financed stadium, so they're actively working with banks. In fact, had a meeting this afternoon with one to pursue and finalize the financing. The city's commitment is being looked at as an anchor tenant that would help them get this financed. And then finally, if all goes well over the next 4 months, there would be a definitive agreement executed between Potomac Baseball LLC, the City of Fredericksburg, and the Fredericksburg Economic Development Authority. The Fredericksburg EDA is not a party to the LOI, but they would be a party to the definitive agreement. And what would follow would then be the construction, and they want to be open by April of 2020. So our recommendation would be that you authorize Mr. Baruti to enter into a letter of intent with Potomac Baseball LLC. And I'm certainly happy to answer any questions, as I know would be the Silber family. Thank you.
Council Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. Since I know a lot of this, we already discussed a lot of it. The newest thing is Mary Washington Healthcare and the partnership. My question is, how does that affect, if in general, I don't understand how that's going to work yet. So, there's new information, but how does that affect the available days that the city was to have or is going to have? Says if we're getting, I don't want to say the number wrong, but 180 days or so of available use of the facility, will Mary Washington's partnership affect in any way the control that we had of the available days instead of, like, let's say, a free-for-all for Mary Washington Healthcare?
The answer is no. There may well be events involving Mary Washington Healthcare. I don't know if you've seen the videos that their CEO has done where they evoke Hamilton, but they've got some talent on staff where perhaps they might use the venue for some sort of fundraising event involving some sort of theatrical performance with their staff, and they raise money for the Mary Washington Foundation. That could occur on a day, but that wouldn't eat into our 183 days. It's essentially a sponsorship. These baseball stadiums, multi-purpose stadiums, are giant advertising venues where there's some talented baseball players that are on the field. But so the big part of the revenue source is the advertising that's sold, and that would be a large advertising package primarily, which would also be of benefit to Mary Washington Healthcare for their employees to go to games and again put on these types of some fundraiser events perhaps for their foundation. But it wouldn't eat into the city's use.
Councilor Devine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Freeling, you talked, we had a question earlier about taxpayer money or a concern about that. And I know you just went over some of the details, and I know this question was something that came up in a conference call and all, but could you just explain for everybody's benefit again how usual or how rare this type of deal is where it's owner financed and give a little more background to that?
Yeah, it's extremely rare. Mr. Baruti and I had a call with the president of minor league baseball and several other minor league baseball executives, as well as a Carolina League executive. And they said it's not unprecedented that there are other privately financed stadiums out there, but were only able to name 3 or 4. So it's very rare. Usually these are publicly financed, and then the team pays some amount of rent.
So just to reiterate, so no taxpayer funding is going into the creation of the stadium?
Correct. We believe that the payment will come directly from the revenue generated at the stadium.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor Withers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Mr. Freeland, Mr. Rudy, thank you for spending time with me yesterday. I had a lot of questions that I was going to bring up tonight, but I think that they will be worked out in detail, and we can talk about that as we're going forward. There are a couple of questions that I would like to ask, and one is of the owner. We are making this deal, and I'm doing this for informational purposes for the public. We are making this deal with the Potomac LLC, which right now includes the Washington Nationals. But there's no guarantee that the Washington Nationals, as far as I can tell, with this agreement would come with this. And I guess my question is, I'd like to see them here for a while. If you got any, have you had any negotiations, or can you discuss any negotiations you may have had with the Nationals to see that that team in fact does come in? There are a lot of baseball fans here that root for other teams, but I can tell you this is a national city. So I need to ask that question simply for public information.
And you're how much younger than I am?
3 years.
I think that to answer that question, I've got to, again, go back and give you a little bit of the 101 in terms of how minor league baseball actually works and so forth. And I might add that of the 160 minor league teams in the United States that are a part of Major League Baseball, okay, there has never been a default on a loan or a lease. We are guaranteed through our master agreement with Minor League Baseball Inc. and Major League Baseball, a Major League affiliate. Okay, all of the 160 teams, of the 30 Major League teams, every one of them has at least 5 affiliates, and some, including Washington, have 6. There are 6 levels of minor league ball. The average Major League player spends 5 years in the minor leagues. When Steven Strasburg, who I believe is going to pitch for us, by the way, this coming Sunday on a rehab, signed a contract for $15 million out of San Diego State, he went to the minor leagues. When Bryce Harper signed for $9.7 million, who we've had a couple of times on rehab, he went to the minor leagues. Every one of the 750 major league players has played in the minor leagues, and since the draft started in 1968, of the 750 each year, times the number of years from 1968 to 2018, I can't do that math, there have only been 25 players that went directly to the major leagues. Baseball is just too difficult to sport, and it doesn't work the same as basketball or baseball. You are all 160 teams have basically the same agreement, and it's either a 2-year or a 4-year affiliation agreement. The Nationals only signed 2-year agreements. Right. We have been their affiliate since they moved to the area from Montreal in 2005. We have a very positive relationship with them. They love the fact that we're so close. If they have first of all, it's very easy for them to monitor the progress of their players. If a player gets hurt, it's easy for them to come to us for a rehab, because then they can go home and sleep in their own beds. And we have absolutely no reason to believe that they would not continue to have their affiliation with us. When I bought the ball club 29 years ago, we were affiliated with the New York Yankees. And the closest major league team was Baltimore. And it was great affiliation. We had players like Andy Pettit and Bernie Williams and a whole bunch of other famous guys. And we've had different affiliations through the years. When the Nationals moved in, they just kind of locked it in. They are excited about what's happening down here. We have kept them apprised of the situation continuously. We have spoken at length with Mark Lerner, who's the president of the ball club, is certainly aware of it. In effect, they had to give us their permission to explore coming here, because technically this is actually part of their territory. When they came in 2005, they drafted our territory, and we were compensated for it. But technically right now, this is actually their territory, and we have every reason to believe that it's a relationship that would continue for a very long time.
Right. Thank you for that answer. And I read the information that the mayor sent out, Mr. Broody, today about the conversations that we had with the Carolina
Pat
League with
and,
baseball.
Jeff Lassen.
And in that, one of the statements were that your organization is well respected among baseball. So
They're
that's
very kind to say that.
well,
Thank you.
it's very comforting for us, so especially for me to read that kind of endorsement. So again, I asked you that question. I want to make sure everybody understands that it looks like they're going to be here, but there's no guarantee in that.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
And I look
Anything else?
No, not right now.
It's going to be my birthday Saturday. You're going to wish me a happy birthday?
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
We can do, well, while you're there, Mr. Silver,
Yes.
just hang on a minute.
Sure.
Does any other counselor have any question you'd like to ask of Mr. Silver or the family? Okay, then we
I was
can let
just
you
gonna
sit
say, I
down.
still take batting practice at now almost 78 with a ball club, and I invite you to come out and do that with us, okay?
All right.
I was a poor batter at 19. I don't think at 75, I don't know.
That sounds like a double dog dare you. I'll meet you at recess.
Madam Mayor, I have one more question.
Yes,
And
yes.
I apologize in advance to the city attorney, but have you got this agreement available to you, Madam Attorney?
Yes, I do.
The terms of the letter of intent, that's a legal, well, wait a minute, that's not what I wanted to ask. I flipped it down. It was an agreement that you, and I think the Silver's attorney came up with.
You got to speak into the
Speak in your
mic,
mic.
Counselor Withers. No one can hear you.
3-9, definitive agreement. Would you elaborate on that a little bit, exactly what that means in layman's terms?
I'll try. Well, the letter of intent establishes a framework for us to work together towards what we're calling definitive agreements. And that would be the final product that hopefully we'll be reaching and approving at the end of the 120-day study period. What we're doing with the letter of intent is just framing up the negotiations, framing up the topics that we need to develop in more detail, and those will go into the definitive agreements. Is there something specific about 3.9? Definitive agreements is mentioned throughout the LOI.
Well, I don't know, for some reason that caught my attention when I read through this stuff. Okay. So-
Essentially, what agreements will be required? We'll have a contract.
Correct, Madam Mayor. We know we'll have some sort of contract, a performance agreement or a development agreement, partnership agreement, that sort of thing. And there may be subordinate agreements as well. For example, in order to activate the city's use of the facility, we might have a lease that goes along with that. Or there may be an agreement to hire the qualified operator. That's also mentioned in the LOI. So there may be a number of definitive agreements that are the result of the 120-day study period.
I guess where I'm going is things like medical and police protection. We haven't talked about those things. Who covers that expense? Is that something that will be worked out before the final agreement?
We actually do cover that expense.
Okay.
We do
Fire-
now.
fire and
We
rescue and
fully
security.
anticipate doing that.
That's another good answer you've given. Well, see, we weren't privy to all of that, so that's the reason I raised that.
There are no other substantive issues to negotiate. And I might add, Council, that you were terrific to work with, by the way. And but we have no substantive issues to negotiate. I think that just falling into the final agreement is just going to happen very easily.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you.
Thank you,
sir.
Vice Mayor Withers. Councilor Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking forward to move this project forward, but also we do have an obligation to respond to the community, and I just wanted to touch on a few things. Councilor Devine touched on it in a question to our Economic Development Director, Mr. Freeling. Most of the deals that you see, and there's one other aspect I wanted to throw into this, was the locality builds, the team does a lease back. Also, the split on that is usually 70-30 on average. 70% locality, 30% from the team. In addition to financing the stadium, the dynamics of the cost is basically the team is taking on the bigger share of the cost than we are, and that's another factor to point out. Am I correct in this, Mr. Freeling?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Is this on?
It's on.
The team would be covering approximately, the debt service is anticipated at about $2.5 million, and the city's, so it's about 1.05. So the city's covering about 40% of the debt service, and the team covering about 60%, and then the team has all the operational and maintenance expenses.
Okay, thank you. So to the point, and this has been said a lot, and I've gotten a lot of comments about this, that we do have other priorities that we need to be funding. And believe me, I can run you off a list right now, a mile long, with regards to education, with regards to water and sewer, with regards to police and fire, and a lot of things that we're doing now. In fact, what we've had to focus on, and these are not wants, these are needs, has resulted in, frankly, some of us will remember that we were actually going to build Dixon Street Phase 3 recreational facility. And that went right off the radar screen after we approved a rather big project, which will remain nameless at the moment. And we've got a lot of things facing us. But at the same time, I agree that this is what is more of a quality of life issue than it is necessarily we're going to make a whole bunch of money on it. I hope we do make some additional funding on it, but that's not the original intent. To me, baseball is the icing on the cake. This provides recreational opportunities, it provides entertainment opportunities, and as we talked about this evening, we've got a great trail system. We've got trail systems, now we have stadiums, and we have entertainment venues and things like this, and we've been briefed on this a number of times by the business community, and everybody who's headhunting for businesses right now. Number one thing the business looks for, workforce. In the top 5, if not 2 and 3, is quality of life issues. What kind of amenities is there for my employees for me to do? Another aspect of this, and I mentioned this the last time we talked about it, is this is the Carolina League, and I encourage everybody to go online and look at all the communities that have stadiums from the Carolina League. Look at how did they finance their stadium? How are they performing? How do they finance their stadium? So you'll get a sense of this. And you'll see that you're talking about an organization that's getting ready to celebrate its 75th anniversary with an average team length on site of 30 years plus, and it's expanding. So if there are big busts on the financial side, right now, all the indications that we have gotten have shown otherwise. So please look at that. Understand, we mentioned the Fredericksburg-Dunleavy study, which we've done, and we had that study restudied. And in the meantime, we have talked to our financial advisors, or even our bond counsel, even though we're not bonding it, and things of that nature. We have looked at this. Can I give you anybody 100% guarantee that everything's going to fall in place, we're going to do this? You can't give a 100% guarantee. If you're looking for 100% guarantees on any type of development, you're not going to get any development, you're not going to do anything. There's always risk. You've got to acknowledge that. But we have looked at every possible angle of this that we possibly can, and everything is showing that this will perform and it will cover the expense. To the point of this money could be spent, and I've heard it, we're going to need roads and everything else. No stadium, no money. All we're doing is taking the money generated by the stadium and putting it in the stadium. We're not looking at taking general fund revenues or anything else like that, or diverting from housing, diverting from transportation, diverting from education to do this project. And again, it's noted, this is not just us handing over money. We are getting something for the return. We're getting use of the facility. We are getting the advertising. This is a tourism community. And that's one thing that also people need to understand is look at the community itself. We're a tourism community. That's a target market for us for people to come down here. So that will help us in that regard. Another aspect about numbers and generations is we are sitting in the fastest growing region in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're looking at doubling our population the next 20 plus years. We're also a very transient community. People are here 3 or 4 years in the government, and they move out. So we'll have this constant changeover in a fan base. We're not a static location. And I think, as Mr. Silber noted, why they're very happy to be here, and the Nationals are happy to be here, they look at this market and they see what this market is. And I think that stadium and that opportunity for that will have other development go around it. Because you look at any other stadium, whether you like it or not, the concept here, there is other development that goes around the stadiums. And some of the things I'd say to people when they talk about taxes, I'm saying, this is a potential to where I don't have to raise your taxes because I'll have other sources of revenue coming in around this that will help me pay for education, help me pay for roads and everything else. Because frankly, right now, with our situation here in the city and what's going on in the state and the federal level, we're at the bottom end of the food chain. I mean, I've got people in the General Assembly who constantly talk about, we've held the line on taxes and then everything rolls back on us and we're having to pick up all the additional costs. So from that standpoint, this is an economic development opportunity. It is definitely a quality of life opportunity, and baseball is the icing on the cake because, as Mr. Silber noted, Major League Baseball has to sign off on this deal because they've got to make sure that everything works, and that, excuse the pun, gives us a backstop on this approach. So everything that can be done to ensure that this deal works both for the team and Major League Baseball, because Major League Baseball eventually has to sign off on this, is there. I think we've done more than our due diligence. For some of us, this has been a 3+ year odyssey of going to stadiums, talking to bankers, talking to financial people, talking to other localities and how they did things. So a lot of time and effort has been spent by the city looking into this over years and years and years. So I think it is really time for us to go ahead and move forward in this. I think it'll be a great asset to the community. And again, an asset for quality of life, for recreation, for entertainment, for our community. Because again, the comment is correct made earlier on. We've got a lot of other priorities we're gonna have to be dealing with transportation and everything else. But this at least gives us something that frankly we've put off a long time on recreational opportunities in this community because we have focused on other things. Thank you.
Councilor Devine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Kelly kind of hit on some of the things I was going to talk about, just because it is such a quality of life addition. But I also did want to speak to what Mr. Withers said before, too, about the fact that in that conference call, some of the comments that were relayed to us about the owners, the family, were very positive, and I think that that's different from some of the other organizations we've talked to or dealt with. So that to me is very positive. I see the family commitment in the ownership. They're very community oriented. I think they appreciate the community that is Fredericksburg and are looking to, add to it. And I'm just, it's just very reassuring to get the feedback we've gotten from people who, have dealt with baseball organizations for longer than we've dealt with. And I also look forward to moving this project forward. I've been a baseball fan since I was a little kid. And I go to stadiums whenever I am staying. I was at the Rockies the other day in Denver. So I am a huge baseball fan. I look forward to attending games right here at home. So thank you.
Councilor Duffy?
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to emphasize what Councilor Devine did, that this ownership group does seem to be so community-oriented. I think it will be something that will bring this community together, too. And so I look forward to that. I look forward to learning more as we find a way to work out all the details, and I appreciate all the work that staff has done and will do. And I'm happy to vote for this tonight. Thank you.
All right. Councilor Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. And just so the public knows, we do listen to these phone calls, and not everybody looks for a response, but we get the emails. I respond when it's necessary, or sometimes people just drop a note and say, "Hey, this is what I feel about it," and so on and so forth. But besides the baseball, there's a business component to it that we're talking about now. And so baseball is great, as long as the deal is great as well. So just for the public's sake, know that we've been talking about this, for a while. We haven't been hiding it from you guys. We just had to have some closed session meetings, that's all. But I look forward to the next couple of months of talking to, Mr. Freeling, Mr. Baruti, and Mr. Whitley, you know, about some of the questions or, you know, the what ifs and, you know, because this opens up the door. So, you know, to lock it in even more, you know, it'll still be some more questions and concerns and stuff that we'll have over time. So I look forward to that part. And, of course, the benefit that it brings to the city, I spoke on it before, that it could bring to the city if everything works out, is huge. And like I said, I'm happy to sit here to have this discussion. I was going to say something earlier about crime. I'm a stickler on crime and crime prevention and so on and so forth. And we work hard as a city, you know, to have great things. We have good Parks and Rec department. We have a lot going on here in the city that we actually work hard at. And just the fact that I feel that as a city we're stable. As a city, you can make a phone call here in the city of Fredericksburg, and a lot of things can be taken care of in an hour or so, at any time, pretty much. So to have this added component to the city for the future, I think is huge. And the work skills and so on and so forth that the kids here in the city, the opportunities are at a minimum. We have other shopping areas and other areas around the city of Fredericksburg. At one time, we were the only area, you know, for a lot of employment. So a lot of the county kids and so on and so forth would come in, and our kids right here, you know, will kind of miss opportunities for jobs and their first job and so on and so forth. So the fact that there's so many opportunities here, like I said, as long as the business part works out great and that part is done, then I would love to see what this could bring, you know, for the city. And like I said, I said it before, a dream sometimes is good enough. So, you know, a lot of these kids here don't see outside of Fredericksburg. So, you know, if they can imagine something, you know, who knows what it'll take these kids in the future. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw.
We've had considerable discussion without a motion before us to discuss. Perhaps it's time to get a motion up, but
Madam
Vice
Mayor.
Mayor Withers, wait a minute.
May I say one thing before you make a motion, please? Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do have to have a public hearing on this. Is that?
That's correct.
Okay,
Going forward, there will be opportunities for the public.
I want to make it plain, you know, there are a lot of details that we had to work on, obviously, that need to be done, as Mr. Fry said in closed session. But I want the public to understand that we still need to hear your input. I mean, this is a LOI. This is something that we're trying to work out details. So I just like to remind the public we will have a public hearing to keep the information coming to us. I think you can tell that obviously this council is very much trying to work this deal out, but we don't want to leave you out. So keep the phone calls coming and keep asking us questions. This is a great staff, and I think a good council, but we, like everyone else, can't know everything. So keep in touch, come to the public hearings, keep the information coming, and we'll make the final decision when we get there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilor Kelly?
Madam Mayor, I'll move approving a letter of intent with Potomac Baseball LLC for the development of a multipurpose outdoor recreational facility in Celebrate, Virginia South.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Vreeling. And thank you, Silver family, for being here, supporting us tonight. Item 11B, I will call upon Ms. Jett.
Good evening. Today we're here to approve a 2019 budget amendment in the Social Services Fund related to Medicaid expansion. On April 30th, the Virginia General Assembly passed their biennium budget that included Medicaid expansion. Additional administrative funding to assist the increased volume of Medicaid applications was provided for new local benefit program specialist positions. The city was allocated approximately $97,800. The city wishes to hire a benefit specialist and increase overtime to process the anticipated increase in applications. In addition to staffing, the additional funds may be used for any activity related to Medicare expansion. The Department of Social Services will use a portion of their funds to support outreach. No local match is required in FY 2019. Medicaid expansion will become part of the base budget beginning in 2020 and will require a 15.5% local match. The required local match related to Medicaid expansion will be approximately $15,200 in FY 2020. Staff recommends approval of this budget amendment.
Are there any questions for Ms. Jett? Councilor Duffy?
I do have a question. I don't know how to put it. I guess.
I also have Mrs. Christine Gallick
Thank
here
you, Ms.
from
Gallick.
Department of Social Services. If you have any questions, I
The
can answer.
great servant to this community. Thank you. I guess what I'm asking, do we really know what Medicaid expansion is going to mean to Fredericksburg down the road, and what the value of that is, and what kind of payoff are we going to have for this investment, just in general terms?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
What we're anticipating about 1,400 city residents will gain health care coverage through expansion.
Wow.
And most of that, we believe, will be childless adults. So obviously, the benefit of health care coverage is priceless. And there are a lot of things we don't know, but expansion opens up coverage for childless adults, and it also raises the income limits for the elderly and disabled.
Well, I appreciate all that you do and all that you will do to implement this, and I'm glad to endorse this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Gallick or Ms. Jett? Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would like to move the resolution approving a fiscal year FY 2019 budget amendment appropriating funds in the Social Services Fund related to Medicaid expansion.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11C, I'll call on Mr. Fawcett.
Good evening. Items 11C and 11D are related, and with your permission, Mayor, I will give a short presentation that will give you the context for both, and then council can ask questions and then eventually consider them. I think separate votes are required, but they're very much related to one another. As we talked about briefly at last meeting, what the ordinance that's before the council for second reading tonight would do would be to establish regulations and require permits for the placement of certain items within the city's right-of-way. And this includes large trash debris, usually construction debris type containers of the type that you see on the screen now. There's another of those. You see these around the city, mostly related to either construction or renovation projects. The second type are the storage units, the large storage units that have come to the pods is actually a brand name, but it's become the name by which a lot of folks call these things. That one's a pack rat by brand name there, and there is actually one of the pods. We've seen these on the streets as well. As we talked last time, these are more commonly used either for moving in or moving out, or sometimes for storage furniture during a home renovation, hardwood floor refinishing type project, or other projects where the property owner needs some space to put something that is in the unit, is in the house or the business for a temporary period. And then thirdly, and you see on the left there, portable toilets. This is less frequent, but it's also less desirable overall, and we do try to allow these to be placed in the public rights of way only when that is the only option for the applicant. So the ordinance before you for second reading is to establish regulations and require permits for this. The resolution, which is the item 11D, which is referenced in the ordinance, is to establish fees for the permits. And that's what I want to talk about for a moment now in a bit more detail than we did 2 weeks ago. The fees that are proposed for the portable storage units, the pods and other brand names of these portable storage units, the proposed fee is $20 for the first 7 days, and for each additional day, $5, with a $20 minimum fee. And just to give you just a couple of examples, a 30-day month, if you had it for a 30-day month, that would total up to $135 for that fee. Each additional 30-day month would be $150, although the fee would be calculated by the day. For the mobile garbage bins or dumpsters, the proposed permit fee would be a straight $100 per month or a portion thereof with a $100 minimum fee. And then finally, for the portable toilets, it would be $25 a week or a portion thereof with a $25 minimum fee. The other provision of that's in the ordinance that relates to fees or relates to the placement that I wanted to emphasize this evening is the ordinance does establish a fine for encroachment upon the public right-of-way without an approved permit. This doesn't happen all that frequently, but occasionally we'll discover, usually they're dumpsters or storage units that are placed by an individual resident, placed on the public right-of-way without having first obtained a permit. This would establish a fine of $100 for that, and that fine would have to be paid before then the permit would be processed to permit it to stay there. The only other thing I wanted to say before opening it up for questions is that in the resolution that was distributed to you prior to the June 12th meeting, there was also a provision for if any of these units were placed in a parking space on the street where a fee was charged for the parking, that the applicant would also need to pay the parking fee that the city would not be collecting because of that, the presence of that. There was some concern expressed about that at the last meeting, and so that provision has been taken out, deleted from the resolution, and staff's recommendation would be that it can be revisited at the time that the council establishes paid parking in the city. It would currently not have any impact because there's currently no paid parking on the streets in the city. And so the recommendation is to revisit that, and it can be then considered in the whole context of establishing of paid parking and the fees for paid parking and so forth. And with that, I'll close and I'll be glad to answer any questions. Recommend both the second reading of the ordinance and the adoption of the resolution.
Councilor Devine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Fawcett, how quickly does a permit for a storage unit or something get processed? What's the turnaround time?
Business day.
Business day?
Yeah. We don't have such a high volume that it takes a long time to do that. It is processed through the Public Works office, and especially if somebody says, you know, I'm applying on Thursday and the company's bringing the pod or the storage unit tomorrow or the dumpster the next day, we can certainly act very quickly. We would hope they'd give us a little more time than that, but that it can be arranged.
Madam Mayor?
Sorry, if I could follow up just with another
I'm
question. I guess I was just looking at basically a dumpster would be a $100 fee for a month.
Right.
And a fine, if they didn't get a permit, would be $100. I guess I was wondering if we didn't catch it for a couple of weeks and they just removed it. I guess it's the equivalent to getting a permit. So I don't know. I was just wondering if there should be a fee in addition.
It's a valid point. We've not done any real scientific research on this, but most dumpsters, once they're placed, are there more than a month. So the $100, it's not referenced specifically in the resolution, and I would have to defer to the city attorney, but the fine would only get them to the point of applying for and then paying the fee, and then the fee would then apply from that point forward. So you're right that if somebody was planning to have it there for less than a month, they might take the chance that they don't get caught and don't have to pay at all. I would like to think that they're pretty hard to hide out there once they're on the street, and we do have, I call them in fairly regularly myself and say, do we have a permit from this dumpster or this pod? So I acknowledge that it could be an issue, but I don't know it would be a frequent issue.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Graham.
So just to piggyback off of Councilor Devine's question, what about those who simply refuse to pay? I mean, with a car who they don't move after getting a parking ticket, we can boot them. Can't really boot a dumpster. What sort of final resolution do we have for those who simply refuse to comply?
We can put their dumpster behind a fence at the city shop and hold it there until they've paid all the fees that we impose on them. And we do have the equipment to do that. We have removed dumpsters from the street in the past when we've had a particularly uncooperative owner of that unit. And I should have mentioned perhaps before, and it is obvious, I assume, almost all of these units are placed by companies that do business with the city on a regular basis. And I think I can say without fear of contradiction, we don't have any bad actors among those groups. We've got a good relationship with all of the companies which is a relatively small number, quite frankly, that put the dumpsters, the pods. Every now and then, a new brand name of the storage unit will show up, and we'll find out that's being managed out of the Raleigh office. And so that presents a bit of a greater challenge than if there was a local office or a local person that was representing them. But for the most part, we have a good working relationship with these folks. This isn't being presented because we think we have a huge problem and we've got to really crack down on these folks. Quite frankly, the genesis for what's before you tonight was the belief that a fee should be charged, because we've never charged a fee in the past, but the city is permitting a private entity to use a portion of the public right-of-way for that entity's exclusive use during the time that it's on the street, and there is an economic value to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Withers?
Yeah, I just had one question. The $20 fee, does that, and I know you don't want to charge for so much, but does that cover the cost of the clerical cost and the cost of issuing the permits?
The $20 fee on
the minimum $20 fee on.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost the.
Yeah, it's okay. It doesn't, it doesn't matter which.
Yeah, the $20 is for the portable storage units. That probably is a break-even at best provision, but we wanted to make it, a lot of these, much more so in the case than with the debris containers, a lot of them show up on a Friday and are picked up on a Monday. Somebody's moving in or moving out, and they're not there for a very long period of time. So you're right that it probably doesn't do much more than cover the cost of processing a permit, but if they're there longer than that, then the fee goes up.
Okay, good. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilor Devine?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Foster, it wouldn't involve a fee to the city, but if do we have a time limit on somebody having a dumpster or pod in their driveway or in their yard? I know it's not quite related to this, but
I don't know the answer to that, and that's more of a zoning and a personal and a private property maintenance question, so I wouldn't want to speculate for fear of giving a wrong answer on that, but we'll certainly get the answer for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Fry?
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. And Mr. Fawcett, I'll say first, thank you for all your work on this. As last time, I'm not going to support it just on the strength of we now charge for, trash services, which there's a need for that. So a lot of folks have problems getting to the dump like they used to and so on and so forth. So now we run into situations where folks are doing housework or whatever it might be, just like you said, getting the floor done, so doing renovations or whatever the case, and I just don't see, after now, some of the normal things that a lot of people could do at one time they can't do, and to charge them, because when they get a storage container or a trash bin, it's needed at that time, so I'm not going to support it based on that. I appreciate your work, but I can't support it to charge our residents. To me, it feels like a double charge. We charge them to go to the dump, and then we charge them to bring a fee to bring a dump to their house. It's like, it's kind of, that's just how I see it. So that's all. But thank you for your work.
Any other questions for Mr. Fawcett? This is a second read for the ordinance, and we also need to vote on the resolution separately. Do I have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'll move an ordinance on second read regulating the placement of mobile garbage bins, mobile storage units, and portable toilets encroaching on city streets and sidewalks.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 6-1, 5 voting against.
All righty.
Madam Mayor, I move a resolution establishing fees for encroachment of mobile garbage bins, mobile storage units, and portable toilets on city streets and sidewalks.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 6-1, 5 voting against.
Thank you. Item 11E, Mr. Nelson.
My 50 slides didn't get loaded, so we'll have to forego those. Madam Mayor, members of council, we have an opportunity to apply for federal funding under FY18 federal funds for a program that's called BUILD. We are looking to submit for the Gateway Boulevard project, and we're scrambling to get an application ready for submittal by the 19th of this month. It's an 80-20 program, and so we're looking at, and the numbers have continued to change on the cost of the Gateway Boulevard project, but we're looking at an overall cost of $27.3 million. With an 80-20 split, we are looking to use the $5 million in right-of-way donation and then another $500K from the city council to hit that 20%, and then we would be looking then to ask for the rest of that funding to come from federal funds. So the price is certainly going up, but the city cost, if we were to get this particular grant, would be considerably less than what you may have anticipated. So we're looking for a resolution to authorize the $500,000 donation from the city that would be, again, combined with the $5 million right-of-way, so that we can submit this application within the very short fused timeframe.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Nelson?
Question?
Yes, Council Duffy.
Thank you. If we were to get this grant, how would that affect the time frame, and what is the time frame of learning about this?
It would be, we would have to, there's certain challenges with this. One of the things that we need to do to get the roadway ready for construction is to go through the environmental process. Most applications being submitted, that process will have already been done. They're looking to get things done very quickly. We would have some time to actually go through that process, but we would have to have an agreement, and we would have to sign a contract with US DOT by September of 2020. So in that interim period, we would have to be scrambling to do this. But the program is moving very quickly, so we would have to have an agreement in place no later than September 2020. The funds would have to be expended no later than September 2025. So this moves quickly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Mr. Nelson? Council Kelly?
Not so much a question. I guess we're taking every opportunity to find money to build this road so we don't have to spend the money ourselves to do it. Because, and I understand the challenges, but we're committing $500,000 that if we don't get it, we don't spend it, and we're back to smart scale. Don't put a lot of faith in smart scale at the moment, but I applaud staff's efforts to turn every rock they can find to locate this money. So with that, I will move authorization of submittal of the build program application.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All righty, and item 11F, I will call upon Ms. Dooley, our city attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The proposal before council tonight is to retain a litigation team consisting of Kaufman and Knowles and Sanford Heisler Sharp to represent the city with respect to any civil litigation or civil claims we may have against the entities involved in the manufacture, marketing, sale, and distribution of prescription opioid products. Opioid addiction was declared a public health emergency by the Virginia State Health Commissioner in 2016, and the effects of that public health emergency have been felt in multiple ways here in the city of Fredericksburg. It has resulted in multiple child protective services referrals due to parents who are involved with opioid drugs, law enforcement, emergency medical services, criminal justice system, regional jail system, and the city is attempting to address this multifaceted crisis through multiple means as well. We have prevention task force, response task forces. One potential avenue for addressing the public health crisis is civil litigation. And I know you're aware that the Virginia Attorney General recently filed a civil lawsuit against Purdue Pharma in state courts, seeking damages for the impact of this health crisis on the state. So the proposal tonight is that we could hire this litigation team, and they would provide legal services in 2 phases. The first phase would be a study phase, and working with city staff, they would investigate the actual cost to the city of the opioid crisis. Those costs would be, as I mentioned, law enforcement, regional jail, child protective services, foster care costs, and they would complete that phase in approximately 2 to 4 weeks. At the end of that phase, we'd get a report as to what our actual damages are, and then council would have a decision as to whether it wished to pursue any claims if there were appropriate defendants. There are multiple lawsuits against these defendants in state courts and in federal courts across the country, and the theories of liability involve fraudulent claims about whether or not these drugs are in fact addictive, marketing schemes, distribution schemes, etc. So phase 1 would be the study. Phase 1 services would be provided to the city at no cost. If City Council, upon consideration of the Phase 1 results, chose to move forward with a civil litigation, then Kaufman and Knowles and Sanford Heisler Sharp would represent the city. They would pursue a state court action. They have already filed suits on behalf of Dickinson County and the city of Alexandria. Many other, about a dozen or more other Virginia localities are currently in the midst of the Phase 1 study with this litigation team. And if that litigation then were to result in either an award of damages or a settlement award in favor of the city, the litigation team would charge a contingency fee equal to 25% of the city's recovery. But the Phase 1 services would be provided at no cost. I know that there are multiple costs to the city of the opioid addiction crisis, and that we are engaged in addressing the crisis through multiple avenues. This avenue is suggested as something that's worth exploring, and the resolution is recommended to you.
Might I add that one of the considerations is what would happen if there are awards, with what use would be made of the funds that the localities, and there were many localities involved in this, and a concern is that it be used for treatment and for other means of assisting people and treatment and prevention of this particular addiction. Am I correct in assuming that? Obviously, no definition has been made, as no funds have been awarded, but.
Correct, Madam Mayor. This, the civil litigation proposed on behalf of localities is to recover monies that have been spent by those localities for this purpose, for purposes of prevention and treatment, et cetera. So that money would be returned to the City Council and could be appropriated by the City Council for additional prevention or treatment initiatives.
Okay. Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First off, we had the time with the legal team to discuss it. Last work session for roughly 45 minutes, and it really came down to an issue of you'll get money. and you'll be able to use it potentially for this, this, and this. My question, which was never answered, was how does this move the discussion of actually coming up with reducing the crisis and the issues related to it? And it just kept coming back, but she'll get money. Here, and I am not saying, and I think the legal team and the city attorney have made the point that there, as they noted, they see potential issues of fraud, they see potential issues of conspiracy, which are all criminal acts, which I hope will be taken up and throw away the key, whatever you got to do to deal with it, but we still end up dealing with some of the issues. I found it interesting in the comment was made that we're approaching this as multifaceted because, frankly, this issue has never been discussed before the council before a work session Tuesday night. Kathleen mentioned that there is some groups working out there on this issue regionally, and just to inform the council, we now have working together George Washington Regional Commission, Mary Washington Healthcare, Mental Health America Fredericksburg, Rappahannock Area Community Services Board, Community Collaborative for Youth and Families, Rappahannock United Way, school administrators, physicians, local law enforcement, Rappahannock Area Health District, community advocates, pharmacy people, public defenders, Department of Social Services, Commonwealth's Attorney, Mary Washington Hospital Foundation, and higher education that are all currently working on this issue. My concern about this is we have a tendency to go, wow, there's somebody to blame. Let's oversimplify a big problem, and we're going to show that we're doing something. And the question I have is, are we really doing anything? Are we really accomplishing anything? I'm not saying not do this at some point, but I think we got some discussions to do amongst the council itself before we take this action. And this was from a presentation that was given at GWRC by our health department not too long ago, just to put a little bit of perspective. I'm not saying this is the major thing, but these are things that we didn't talk about in closed session with legal counsel. Fentanyl is the big one. That's the one that everybody is having a problem with. Prior to 2013, most fentanyl-related deaths were due to illicit use of pharmaceutical-produced fentanyl. By 2016, most overdoses were due to illicitly produced fentanyl. No longer from the pharmacy, now it's being produced illegally. Most first-time users obtain the drug from family or friends. Not through prescriptions, they get it from family or friends. 9 out of 10 addicts started experimenting before they were 18 years old. 1 in 5 high school seniors admitted to misusing prescription drugs. Yes, they're the pharmaceutical ones, and they're easy to point at and scream and yell at, but there's also doctors, there's other organizations, insurance companies, and everybody else that are involved in this. And we're jumping, as a council, have taken no action, no discussion on this issue at any other time, and are now going, we're going to go find somebody to sue. We don't even know who the defendant is yet. And on study phase, other than some unidentified pharmaceutical, I should say, to be named at a later date, the other aspect of this to me is when they talk about phase 1 study, who's going to have to collect all this information? We are. Our staff is. I can tell you right now in presentations we've had from GWRC, we've already got a lot of this information pulled together. How many overdoses, what kind of overdoses, what they've been, where they've been treated, where they go. We got a lot of that stuff already. So why do I got to hire an attorney when I'm going to be the one, or us as a city, are going to have to get the information and hand over to them so they can turn around and say, wow, you can get this many millions of dollars in doing it. You know what? It might be an aspect of going down this road, and I wouldn't say to necessarily take it off the table, but I'm really kind of concerned that we get one quick executive session for roughly 45 minutes and just told that, wow, you can get money and you can use it for these and these and these, and we're here at the next meeting of council ready to vote on it on an issue that has multiple facets to it. 1, 2, this action doesn't help the families who've lost loved ones, doesn't help families necessarily that have currently suffering from it. I mean, we're going to get some money back and we're going to put some programs up. And once the money runs out, we don't have the money for programs and the problem is still there. I would at least ask that we not take action on this until we have a full presentation to this council by the group on exactly what we are facing regionally, what are the options that we're looking at, other than from an attorney who wants to take 25% cut off the top. Oh, by the way, they're not taking their specials out first. So, all our costs get rolled into their 25% and they're off and running, which kind of ticks me off also. But more than anything else, we have a tendency to take a very complicated issue and say, we want to show that we're doing something. And whether we're actually doing something or not seems to be immaterial. It's just, we're showing we're going to do something. We're doing something about the opioid crisis by filing suit against some unnamed pharmaceutical companies to be identified later. Yet we have yet had a discussion in this council about this issue and what it is, what it's costing, what we're dealing with in the city now. So all I'm asking at this point is, and again, in the end, on phase one, we're going to be doing all the grunt work. Our staff is going to do the grunt work. I asked recently about a certain initiative I wanted to go, and I was informed, rightfully so. Right now, our staff is stretched to the limit on a number of different projects. We talked about some of them this evening. And we're going to jump right to this, and we're going to have to do this work. So all I'm asking is we defer any action on this until we are briefed as a council, more than 45 minutes from the legal team, on exactly what the city is facing, and you'll find that it'll be a very fascinating presentation. And I've got a copy of it, but I would rather it go from GWRC to here and have the professionals sitting in the room with us to explain what it is, what the issues are. Because like I said, yeah, you can point to pharmaceutical companies and say they produce this stuff, therefore they're wrong, they're fraud, and everything else like that. But just reading those 4 little items, there's a lot more to this than taking the easy way out of just saying, hey, we're going to just sue them, get some money. Guess what, public? We're solving the opioid crisis by suing a pharmaceutical company. And that's frankly what everybody's lining up to do. And I would hope if this is a big enough issue for us to deal with, that we would deal with it appropriately. Thank you.
Councilor Fry.
Thank you, Mayor Greenlaw. Ms. Dooley, thank you for your work and all your communication with the law firm. First, I want to say that. On a bigger scope, I want to say publicly, you know, is every time I deal with this issue, it's amazing because of the real effects of what happened in the late 80s and the 90s with cocaine and the crack epidemic, and what came out of that whole deal was 3 strikes law. So thanks to the Virginia Municipal League on the Human Education Developmental Policy Committee, I had the chance to study this last year. So studying it last year, it opened my eyes to exactly what's going on now. And it was almost like once the 3 strikes law was implemented, then a lot of folks in the urban community went to jail for 20 years. And the drug problem was never really approached. It was incarceration. So now we have, we use crisis and, you know, the words we use for opioids, which it is. So I would like to publicly say, you know, to the pharmaceutical companies and all the lawmakers who made those laws then that were not beneficial to people, shame on you, to all of them, because it's almost like segregated circumstances of what really happened. And I'm pretty much, long story short, you got folks that are coming out of prison right now from the 90s and what was happening now. And now it's like, you know, nobody's like, put it like this, if folks were going to jail for what they were doing then or being punished, nobody's being punished now. And it's like, you know, in all due respect to what you said, Mr. Kelly, folks say, well, you got it from your neighbor, you know, your family member. Where were they getting it from in the 80s and the 90s? You know, they were getting it from somewhere, but somebody was going to jail. Long story short, that's the way I see it. So, you know, when I hear these conversations, and I remember seeing this, and when I saw this last year, I said, wait a minute. You were, like I said, as a whole committee from the state, just different folks, we studied it, and I was like, wow. You know, and if you look at the time frame, you look at the late 90s, and you know, everybody knows about the 3 strikes and all of that, and all of those scenarios. If you look at when it all started happening, it was kind of like one drug is dying, so somebody created a new one. A new addiction, and in a sense, that's just the way I see it. I'm not saying I'm totally right, but somebody has to be accountable for what's going on. And if this is the approach to hold somebody accountable, then I say go for it. You know, in a sense, you see every now and then you see where doctors have been overprescribing and so on and so forth, and they get punished, but it's all got to come from somewhere. So it is a major crisis. I just want to say that publicly, because anytime that this stuff comes up, there's kind of, I see it as, like I say, it's like segregated circumstances. I don't know another word to use. I just made that up, but that's just what I see. in this situation, because a lot of folks were affected. Homes were broken and, you know, broken up, and it's a lot of components that went to folks, and it just was an image or perception that, oh, that happens in the urban area, and those folks are in the hood, or so on and so forth, and they do drugs and they do crack, and you know, that's just the way that it was perceived. And I didn't hear anything about treatment during those times. I didn't hear anything. So it's amazing now that we're at that point that we're talking about treatment, and you know, and we deal with it on a daily basis. I had a friend, I think it was during that time last year when I was studying this, and I had a random phone call, and I had a friend that reached out to me and was trying to get to treatment. That's when I learned about beds. I know we talk about it, and we talk about treatment beds. We talk about it. I didn't know until it happened firsthand to a friend of mine who was looking for a bed. He was trying to get help, and that's when I realized what everybody was talking about when folks can't get help, you know, because of there's no available bed at this facility. And it's real. So long story short, for 7 days, I was up to probably 2 a.m. looking for my friend that I grew up with, looking for him, because when they told him to come back in 3 days, we couldn't find him for 7 days. And it was the most scariest thing in the world when, you know, somebody was reaching out for help, you know, and couldn't get it. So if we can do a lawsuit and provide a bed, almost an instant bed, when somebody is crying out and saying, hey, I need help. I went down to, I want to say the health department, and we started there, and we started going around. We went to some of these facilities and so on and so. I used some of the resources from Micah and, you know, the different folks that we have. And I reached out to everybody I could at that time. And there was a 7-day delay. So like I said, if somebody has to be held accountable, and I like the fact that, you know, that we're saying, I'm not challenging anything that Mr. Kelly said. I like the fact that as a city, okay, we go after, because like I said, if that provides a bed, or we're hearing that tonight or whatever the case, or last night, somebody might have OD'd, somebody's kid OD'd in a room, or whatever the case, and it could have been that scenario where they tried to get them to a facility and oh, well, we can't help you until next week. You know, who knows what happens. So it's a deep issue, and I didn't think I was going to ramble that long, but it's a deep issue. But I want to say, Ms. Dooley, thank you. And with the firm and all of that, I have my reservations about, you know, just how it goes. But we have to do something. So I'm not going to make a motion or anything. I'm not going to stop what it was said, but I just want to make that statement. And thank you, Ms. Dooley.
Thank you. Councilor Duffy.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you both for your comments. I do have many friends in the recovery community, and these times are desperate. It is awful. And I don't think it's a secret that a particular pharmaceutical company basically misled everyone about the addictive nature of these very dangerous drugs that were produced at phenomenal rates. And you know, they trained hundreds of people to go out throughout the country and convince doctors to use these in a different way than they had ever done before. And I think that they are responsible for the costs on local communities that have just been devastated. We're lucky that we're not like some communities in West Virginia, but Abington, Virginia, you know, devastated. So I'm prepared to move on this tonight, but understand if people need more time. But again, I don't think this is a secret that this just happened because doctors were lazy. This happened because of you know, purposeful efforts to mislead people and gain financially billions of dollars at the expense of truth. So I'm supportive going forward.
All right. Councilor Duffy, I'll follow up with what you said, that it is known that the pharmaceutical companies knew the addictive properties and disguised them and misled and had distribution systems to capitalize on the addiction. And that's why I would go forward with this, because we can't let pharmaceutical companies get away with that kind of behavior. Number one, this is clearly different than the crack and those periods of addiction. And furthermore, it's very often not our young people. It's our middle-aged folks. And it's people you wouldn't consider. And very, very, very often, because originally they had an accident and they were prescribed the drug, and then they, went on from there. But it's a known entity, and it's not a matter of, oh, we'll get some money. It's a matter of doing what we can, number one, to stop that kind of behavior and say, we're not allow this. And number two, hopefully to constructively use the receipts from it. And therein lies the rub. When these settlements come, it's like tobacco. The huge tobacco settlement, all that money, not all of it did as much good as we would like for it to, but it did do some good. So I certainly, what we're considering tonight is just phase one, which is to collect the information. And Councilor Kelly may be correct that these folks collecting the information will lean heavily on our staff and others in the community, the very people that Councilor Kelly's talking about who have reported to him, the health department. But at our fire and rescue, they will lean heavily on these people to gather the information. But in effect, the report that will be gathered will be the very report that Councilor Kelly is asking for. What is the situation? What is the damage? And in this case, they're going to give us the damage in terms of dollars and cents, but we all know it's far, far more significant than that. I mean, we see it. The dollars and cents are the children, that the families that are affected that we have to take care of, that the dollar value is minuscule to the human value, to the quality of life value, to the welfare in the overall and the future of these children who are affected by this, the children who have to be taken from their families because families can't take care of them. So I feel very strongly that we should go forward, but if council wants to hesitate and consider for a longer period of time, I'll go along with that. But I think we should gather the information and know what we're doing, and be one of what I think are going to be a whole lot of communities in Virginia who will join in on this effort. Councilor Devine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I want to say that I was not here at the last work session, but I did meet with the city attorney prior to that meeting to talk about it. So I was aware of what council was going to be considering that evening. I am prepared to go forward with it tonight because of some of the things that were just said, but we're going forward with phase one, and it would give us an opportunity to, discuss and consider what the next step would be, whether we want to go forward with phase two or not. We're not obligated to do that. So it's a discovery phase. It's something that, again, we all know there's an issue. We don't know the depth of it necessarily, and as we said, the monetary costs and the social costs. So I'm prepared to go ahead with it tonight because I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think it's a step forward that I think we need to know. So, thanks.
Vice Mayor Withers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to direct the question to the city attorney. We just had this a couple of weeks ago, but I think there's been some events that have happened over the past, since we've had that last meeting, that has caused you to send this forward to us. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Madam Mayor, yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. When we met last Tuesday in closed session, the only lawsuits that had been filed in Virginia were those by Dickinson County and the city of Alexandria. And I believe it was on Wednesday afternoon, the next day, that the Virginia Attorney General filed the lawsuit against Purdue Pharma. I do believe that the matter will begin to pick up steam, so to speak, with that filing, and that more Virginia localities will begin to get closer to those Phase 2 decisions with the leadership of the Attorney General and the decision to file in state court as opposed to joining the federal court litigation. So I believe that there is some timeliness aspect to council moving forward with the resolution.
Madam.
Yes, Vice Mayor Withers.
I very much always appreciate my good friends' comments and concerns, but I frankly can't see the advantage of putting this off. I just don't know what we could learn in a few weeks. And again, this is not about just money for me. It's about going after the folks that cause this problem. So with that, I'm going to make a motion that we pass this resolution.
Second.
Okay.
Yes, Councilor Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to comment on it, again, I'm not totally against this because I don't have all the information. Two, I would only ask that we have a conversation about this issue and what we can actually do. Because again, my biggest fear here is we're going to tell the public, and again, I guess it's just pointing at one person saying it's all their fault. And again, the fundamental question is, we win a lawsuit, we get a bunch of money, the problem's still there, the issues are still there. As the city attorney mentioned, the state has finally gotten off its tail and filed a suit. And the feds are going to do it, and everybody else is going to do it, criminally and civilly. So to somehow think that our little effort here is necessarily going to be the gigantic storm that's going to turn everything over is not quite the case. And I would rather have a conversation of what are we doing as a community to actually stop this from progressing, as opposed to continually taking actions to treat the symptoms of what is happening.
Well,
and then again, that was my only question to the attorneys. How does this change policy to create a situation where we stop this in its tracks or start slowing it down? And it just kept coming back, but you'll get money.
Well, hopefully it will support some of the ongoing efforts. There was a major citywide meeting about a year or so ago, from which there are numerous task force operating. I am on one of them. And so I know that there are task force operating, and hopefully this will feed into support of these ongoing efforts. Councilor, do we have a second?
Yes. We've already fucking voted. So.
Yeah, but I haven't called for the vote yet. We're still in the discussion phase. Councilor Duffy?
I do hope that the federal government will continue to regulate things more strictly and expect that companies will be more honest about it and be held accountable criminally too. We obviously can't do that, but we can do this.
All right. Councilor Fry?
I just want to jump in and add another statement. I do believe, especially what we're dealing with is a crisis or epidemic, and the deal with that is that it's happening right now. That's what that means to me. It's happening now. It's and any confusion is part of being in the middle of a crisis or epidemic. So I just feel, I'm supportive of what we, at least we'll get some information. And if these agencies and firms and everything, and if we step out on a regional level, then I guess we could be sitting out waiting on other localities to join in with us. And how does that work? We can't even find out who will help us with some of our issues now, like homelessness and so on and so forth, the stuff that we're stuck with now. So, I know it's good to have regional support on different things, but when it comes down to it, and folks had to put up to the pot, just like we had, I think it was a housing deal that we had going on, and outside entities didn't want to put in, or other localities didn't want to put in. It was kind of like we were going to be stuck. So, I do wish for regional support on a lot of these things, but I just haven't seen it happen. So that's all I have to add.
Thank you. All right, motion has been made and seconded. Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 6-1. Kelly voting against.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam City Attorney, for bringing this to us. Item 11G, I'll call on the City Manager for an update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to, on behalf of the city staff, welcome Councilor Graham We look forward to working with you for the next 4 years and maybe beyond. I also want to congratulate Councilor Withers, Fry, and Duffy for their recent swearing in. It's a wonderful ceremony on July 2nd. Also remind folks, as we talked about earlier, FredericksburgBaseball.com has all of the information related to the conversation council just had. It also has copies of the LOI and press releases, again, all sorts of information at FredericksburgBaseball.com. We will be setting a public meeting soon. A date has not yet been determined, but stay tuned on that. Also announced that after much work, Public Works and Parks and other departments have finalized the bathroom at Hurkamp Park. That was a big endeavor. I do appreciate all staff's effort to get that project underway. We have other bathroom projects in our city to include Kenmore Park, so that's teed up and will be next. So help is on the way from our Parks Department as far as additional facilities. I'd also mentioned that Midnight Madness continues this summer. Friday nights, we have a free program for youth, the city's youth, 11 to 17. They can obviously register with our Parks Department to participate in a great Friday evening activity. Free transportation is provided. Again, contact our Parks Department for more information. I'll also gladly suggest to you that the parking lot at the library is complete. We do have a couple minor pieces to wrap up that project, but essentially it has been paved, and we are offering additional parking at the downtown library. We're happy for that. Also, just finally, I'll highlight the Urban Forest newsletter of the Green Committee. Has just produced its first, I believe, its first quarterly publication. It is in the city manager's update, so please review that. Good information about environment and the work of the committee to keep us clean and green in the city of Fredericksburg. With that, Madam Mayor, you also have your calendar before you. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions, Vice Mayor Withers?
Well, I'd just like to make a statement. I just am elated to hear our city manager commit to working 4 years with Mr. Graham and beyond, which it means to me that he's planning on staying a while, and that's great news for me. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Very good, very good. If there's nothing more, Councilor Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to make a quick statement, thanking everyone on council and on staff for all of their help in making me feel so welcomed so quickly and getting me up to speed on all of the issues. There's a lot going on, and I'm just looking forward to working with all of you on the challenges ahead. So thank you very much to everyone.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being willing to serve, and we do look forward to the next 4 years, or 2 for me. If there's nothing more to come before this body, we are adjourned.
There you go, buddy.